YouTube going. The Godows is back, and NFL free agency is starting to pick up again here just after the NFL draft. Quite a few signings already this week. Couple today, one just moments ago. Donovan Smith going to the Chiefs. And why it's starting to pick up, well, yeah, teams missed out on some needs in the draft. But another reason is signings do not affect the compensatory picks formula anymore. So that's a bonus as well going forward. So more of these signings will happen. I'm talking about some top guys available here in this video, my favorite landing spots, and then my ultimate fit, prediction where they should land, mainly based off fit and need there. So, yeah, can't wait to go over this with you guys here. We have recent draft videos, winners, losers, grades, all kinds of videos like that. 2024 mock, undrafted free agency videos, a couple of those. So check it out. Like, subscribe to notifications on. Follow us on Twitter. And check out our sponsors, Liquid IV and GLD Shop, links pinned in the comments. In my opinion, the top free agent available is Leonard Floyd. I mean, this has been a pretty consistent pass rusher when it comes to getting after the quarterback, but he's also pretty solid and underrated against the run. So I think Floyd helps you in multiple categories, but he's going to fit the 3-4 teams. So he has a 3-4 outside linebacker, so kind of looking for those teams as fits. The Falcons still a little bit, up in the air on what exactly they'll run. I think they'll mix it up a little bit. Could be a multiple defense. I thought they were going to gear more towards the 4-3, but they signed Bud Dupree, so that's a little interesting. But they still could use more pass rushers, so that's why they are on here. A couple coaching fits here. Brandon Staley at one point coached Leonard Floyd. He's with the Chargers, and Ejiro Evero, the defense coordinator with the Panthers, at one point was on the staff coaching Leonard Floyd. And both Staley and Evero were with the Rams at one point as well, where Floyd's at. Staley was actually with the Bears at one point, where Floyd was at too. Seahawks could use another pass rusher, did draft Derek Hall. The Steelers tried to get Bud Dupree back, and they could not do that, so they become interesting for Leonard Floyd. I've been predicting since day one the Panthers, so I'm going to roll with that. He's a scheme fit. He's played, not directly under Evero at one point, but he was on the staff. We know he fits that defense. They need somebody opposite of Brian Burns. Yeah, they drafted DJ Johnson. I don't think that means a whole lot right now, but a guy that has a lot of upside there from Oregon. So Floyd makes a lot of sense to Carolina, but I could see him with some of these other teams as well. It's possible he goes to a team that I just don't think he fits, honestly, but I think he's a 3-4. I know he's a 3-4 guy, and these are the teams, in my opinion, that could use him, and then that he could fit as well. So my top available free agent there. Another guy that is a pass rusher, Frank Clark. Frank Clark's a tricky one if we're trying to rank. I did some rankings in some of these, pretty much all but one of these guys involved in the top 10 rankings, but I did some of that on Twitter. And he's tough to rank. I almost want to rank him 1, and then I almost want to not rank him the top 10. And why I say that is because I feel like he needs a playoff team, or at least a playoff contender, because he plays his best ball in those big games where you need him most, and specifically the playoffs, but maybe the big games at the end of the season. Like, he shows up in some big-time moments. He's actually statistically one of the best pass rushers in playoff history, believe it or not. And then during the regular season, of course, he's still a good player, but how much will he be involved? How much, in a team where there's not a whole lot of motivation? So, for a playoff team, this is probably actually the best free agent available, even though I do like Leonard Floyd. But it's for the right team there. But the Falcons, I think he could fit, and they are looking for another pass rusher. The Lions would make a lot of sense to me because they're looking to be in the playoffs this year, of course, and win some playoff games. They didn't draft a pass rusher, and they could use one. They could be fine going without one, of course. They would be fine, but I think you get better here in a guy. It's a fiery team. I think Frank Clark, I'm combining his first and last name there, would enjoy playing for the Detroit Lions, and that could be a playoff team where he can help them. Niners, same thing. They could use another pass rusher. Right now, it looks like Drake Jackson could get the start, which is definitely fine, and it's a possibility. The second-year player from USC. And the Bears definitely could use a 4-3N. I was shocked they didn't draft one. I'd like Clark a little bit more like the sure thing playoff teams or the very close to playoff teams. And the Browns would make sense opposite of Myles Garrett. They do have a couple of guys now to compete for that spot. I'm going to go with the Niners. I've been saying Falcons for a while, but I was leaning towards Lions or Niners a little bit when the Falcons could be sneaky and get in the playoffs. But more the sure, either close to sure thing or sure thing playoff teams. And I'm going to go with the Niners. I think the Niners will like that. Like, here's a guy. Like, we know we're going to be in the playoffs, Niners got to be saying. And here's a guy that can definitely help us. And we've had some injuries here and there. Niners got to be thinking that. So that makes a lot of sense to me. So I do really like that fit there. But Lions, Browns, Falcons, and then maybe Bears as well. I mean, those teams made some sense. I know the Panthers looking for a pass rusher. I like more of a 3-4 guy for them, obviously. Another top guy for me is Adrian Amos, the safety from the Packers. Used to be on the Bears. Packers could bring him back. They still could use another safety in there. They drafted a couple guys. Guy like Anthony Johnson Jr., I really like that pick, but he's more of a slot guy in my opinion. But he could move around a bit. Actually used to play outside corner. And then you got the Ravens, who he visited with, and they moved on from Chuck Clark. You got the Broncos, a little wild card there. I would like to fit with the Steelers. I believe the Steelers are kind of gearing up to run a little bit more cover 2 this year so he can fit. And the Chiefs run a bit of cover 2. And kind of going back, talking about the cover 2. Amos fits cover. I mean, he could work in a cover 4. I like the split safety scheme for him. But if I'm getting specifically where he could be great again, because he was either great or close to in the somewhat recent past, I like a cover 2 defense for him. And last year the Packers went completely away from that. When he was playing really good ball, it was mainly cover 2. It was some cover 4. And they went away from that. They played a little bit more man coverage. And that's, people maybe say like, well, he's declining, so he didn't play as good. But I think it's just, scheme means a lot, especially for these defensive players. So people kind of forget that. I think the Ravens and our team kind of gearing up to run a little bit more zone. I think we'll see them run a little bit of cover 2. And they had Amos in for a visit earlier in the offseason. Sometimes we see that. They visit, kind of get the idea, a good idea with him, and like, all right, we might be signing you after the draft. Kind of get a good feel for that. So that made sense. This was tough because I could see the Packers getting them back. It really depends on what they want to run, because if they're running the similar coverage they did last year, they probably aren't, super interested unless he's dirt cheap, Ravens actually they signed Rock Ya-Sin earlier today. It's a corner, and they have a little bit of spending money actually. Despite what some websites might tell you, they have some spending money because those sites will tell you Lamar Jackson is being counted towards the full franchise tag because he's not on the franchise tag, but we don't have the full details on his contract. But I can guarantee you that money is backloaded there in terms of cap hits. So they have a little bit more, maybe a lot more money, spending money than you would think. And they signed Ya-Sin earlier today, so they have a little bit more. So I'm going to go with the Ravens. Makes some sense for multiple reasons. Well, and replacing Chuck Clark kind of makes sense to replace him. You could say they have Kyle Hamilton. Maybe their plan is to play Hamilton strong safety a little bit more, but he was dominating the slot for them at the end of last year. So I would think, they're going to move him around a bit, but I would think they mainly keep him there. So they had Amos in for a visit for a reason. So to kind of replace Chuck Clark and kind of gearing towards what they're trying to run. Because remember, they're not that not only, but pretty much only man coverage Don Martindale defense anymore. Don't forget that. So I'm going to go Ravens. Heard the Packers definitely can get him back, though. Another safety, John Johnson, been predicting the Chargers for a while for him. That's what I'm going to stick with here. He could go back to the Rams. He played very well for the Rams, and therefore he got that big contract with the Browns. He was all right that first year. And then the Browns kind of switched it up coverage-wise. Same thing as Adrian Amos. I mean, not the same player at all, but, same thing in terms of he kind of just needs the right team, the right scheme, the right coverages for him to be good again. The Rams, back when they had John Johnson, and still they ran a lot of cover 4. The first year on the Browns, they ran some cover 4. They kind of planned on running that, and they signed John Johnson. Like, all right, he's going to fit, and that was good. And last year they ran a lot less of that, and they kind of mixed it up a bit. And they moved on from him because they feel like, maybe not worth the money, and he's not going to be a fit scheme-wise, coverage-wise, so trying to find that right fit. The Rams run a lot of cover 4. The Chargers are man coverage and cover 4. That's what they run there. Brandon Staley coming from the Rams makes some sense. But man, cover 4. Panthers, their safety is Xavier Woods. They might just stick with that. They got some guys that can move around a bit. You could get a lot better from that Xavier Woods at that spot. Johnson would fit Jiro Evero coming from the Rams background. He runs a ton of cover 4. It's what he ran with the Broncos last year. Eagles, they'll mix it up a little bit probably. New defense coordinator, Sean Desai. They could use a free safety. That could be an option. The Patriots are mainly just man coverage. They could use another. They got a bunch of safeties or guys that can play in the back end. They could get better at specifically free safety. That's more of a deeper wild card here. Kind of forced the fifth one. But, I mean, I could see it, but it's a small percentage. I'm going to go Chargers. Brandon Staley there. They need a free safety. Nasir Adderley retired. He was a free agent anyways. It was a surprising retirement. And they got some guys that can play back there. I mean, Derwin James can play everywhere, but he's mainly a strong safety that can play in the box, can man up on guys in the slots, specifically tight ends. He could even line up at outside corner. You got Alohi Gilman, who's kind of a move around. He moves around a bit type safety. They drafted J.T. Woods from Baylor, who was a big time free safety for Baylor. Maybe some confidence in him. I mean, I can see it. But John Johnson makes a lot of sense there as a fit, and they would get better. So that it just makes a lot of sense there. Another pass rusher, one of the top guys available, Yannick Ngakoue. Maybe what the difference is between him and the other two very top guys is Ngakoue does really struggle against the run, but he gets after the quarterback. He's pretty solid getting after the quarterback. So if you feel like you could stop the run pretty well, you just need a pass rusher, or you just need a pass rusher in general pretty bad, that could be your guy. But the reason he's been bouncing around so much and he's available is because he does struggle to stop the run. So I do think guys like Leonard Floyd and Frank Clark are a little bit more complete, obviously. But yeah, some similar teams. We were talking about a pass rusher. I think he fits these teams. I think he's more of a 4-3 guy, but he did play 3-4 for the Ravens, so the Panthers could be interested. But I was thinking more of these other teams. I had Frank Clark to the Niners. If they don't get him, it could be Ngakoue. I very well could see the Falcons as well. But I went with the Bears here because the Bears badly need a defensive end. They badly need a pass rusher. They didn't really go crazy in free agency. I mean, they got DeMarcus Walker, who's kind of an inside-outside guy. I kind of wondered what he'd play in the Bears scheme. I was actually leaning towards more 3 technique, but it's actually looking like DN there now. So it really looks like that. So, but they didn't draft one. I thought they had some opportunities to draft, one or more in the draft and didn't. So maybe they already had a plan. I wouldn't say Frank Clark, because I really want him. And who knows, the Bears could be sneaky. They got a lot better this offseason. But I really like Frank Clark for like a sure thing playoff team, And Floyd won't be coming back to the Bears, not because he left there, but because I just don't think it's a fit. I know it's not a fit. And Ngakoue could fit there. So I'm going to go Bears. Really thought about Falcons. Really thought about it. He honestly might fit the Falcons a little more than the Bears, depending on what the Falcons want to run here, or the Niners, or the Lions. The Bears issue, they were really struggling to stop the run last year, so obviously this isn't going to help. They did add some guys, some rookies, though, on the inside. So we might see a little bit of the same, but the linebackers will help stop the run. But, my point is, does Eberflus, who really values stopping the run and wants to going forward, does he, and he left Indianapolis and they brought in Ngakoue, so they're interested then. So that's why it's tough. I almost can talk myself out of the Bears, but really what it is here, the Bears got to get somebody. So I had to predict somebody for them is kind of what it was. I don't see Leonard Floyd as a fit, and Frank Clark I wouldn't like to. I mean, he's good. I wouldn't hate it. I just really feel like Frank Clark needs to go to a team that is really going to be in the playoffs. Again, the Bears could be sneaky, but it's tough. It's a little tough to predict that. And then I don't know if the Bears, because maybe he has some slight off the field issues too. They want to put up with that when they're like a young team trying to build some morale out there. So Ngakoue, almost talked myself out of it and kind of leaning towards Falcons but I had Niners getting Frank Clark. If they don't get Frank Clark, watch out for the Niners. Lions looking to stop the run a little bit better, so will he be that much appealing? Falcons, Bears, pretty tough there between those two. I mean, the Bears got to get somebody, though. The Falcons at least signed Bud Dupree before the draft. Shaquille Griffin. There's a lot of cornerback needy teams. We'll talk about another cornerback here in a little bit. Rock Yassin signed earlier today with the Ravens. I actually had Griffin and Peters. Peters is the other corner we're going to talk about in this video, ahead of Rock Yassin as free agents here. So still the top 2 guys are available. I even would put around Ronald Darby perhaps. He does have the injury concern, but we're not going to talk about him in this video, but because he does have the injury concern, but he's another one if you're looking. But yeah, some teams that could use a corner. I would prefer Griffin in a zone defense. He played all zone with Seattle last time he was there, cover 2, cover 3. It's pretty much all zone, and he had a standout. He was good for multiple years, but that last year in Seattle, he had a standout year. The Jags signed him, and they're kind of running a little bit of that, a little bit of zone, more zone than man, and he's all right. Then last year, remember they got a new staff again last year. They were running a lot more man, and so when he was playing, he was struggling in that man coverage, and he got injured, right? So we really didn't get a full sample size. So they moved on from him. He's a little too expensive, but he's somewhat young, 28, solid. He's solid in zone coverage. So this is a little tricky because I'm going to go with the Raiders here. And the Raiders, Patrick Graham, I like as a defense coordinator. The Raiders just need better talent out there, and they're trying. But he's kind of he's been a man coverage guy at times. But if you look back to some of those good years and I really thought he was going to go man coverage. But now I'm starting to think, I'm like, I bet you we see a lot more zone coverage. The more I'm thinking about it, I bet you we see a lot more. Specifically, I'd say cover 3, which I think Griffin fits. If you look back to some of those good Giants defensive years for Patrick Graham, yeah, they ran a lot of cover 3 and actually not a lot of single coverage, cover 1 at all. So, well, I shouldn't say at all, but very, very little. So I'm starting to think, the corners they do have, Duke Shelley actually had a decent year for Minnesota last year. That's all zone. That's all zone there. So, and they draft Christopher Smith from Georgia, who's sneaky good, but only in zone. Like, he actually struggled in man. So I'm starting to think, actually, maybe they'll mix it up in some zone coverages. And I don't know if anybody needs a corner more than the Raiders right now. They don't. No one else needs one more than the Raiders. It's ridiculous right now. 4th round draft pick, Jacorian Bennett's probably got to start. They have some other pieces, but man, they got to get better. So I'm going to go, and they could look some of the other guys I mentioned, corners, but I'm going to go Raiders. I'm kind of banking on them running a little bit more zone here. But the Falcons are tricky again. New defense coordinator. They were more of a zone team last year. I think they'll gear a little bit more towards man. We will see. Maybe some 2-man under makes some sense. Lions. Yeah, they're a 2-man under team, so it's man coverage, but they could run some cover 2. They could use another corner, so I could see it. The Niners, I think they'll run some cover 3, could fit. Cardinals, Jonathan Gannon will mix it up. Cover 2, cover 3, cover 1, and he'll mix it up. He does a good job mixing it up. And they could use a corner. I'm going to go Raiders, though. Badly need a corner and kind of get the feeling that they're going to less man than last year, more zone, specifically cover 3, but they should mix it up. We'll see if that happens. So I'm always that's kind of like the thing I'm always looking forward to. Unlike everyone else, like what type of coverages are teams going to run this year? It doesn't stay the same every single year. A lot of teams do. If they have the same exact staff and the same players, they do for the most part. But Raiders, I think, trying to change that defense up. So next one, Marcus Peters. Yeah, definitely more of a man coverage corner his career. The tough part is you see corners when they start to age, they actually start running less man. They run more zone because man's a lot of, super athletic, super quick, chasing guys around. Older guys don't really want to do that anymore. And, when they're in the league so long, they get a little bit of an IQ. They get smarter, so they're able to, I think you got to be smarter to run zone, so they're able to run that. We see it with the older corners all the time. It's kind of why some of those man teams, they're done with those guys after a certain amount of time. They want the younger guys again. So that's the knock here if we're predicting Peters to go to more of a man team. But I still think he's got it. He's a big-time playmaking corner. He was really good for the Ravens until last year. He was a little shaky. But the Ravens, before last year, were just like maybe the man coverage. Them and the Patriots were like the man coverage teams of football. And their defense coordinator was Don Martindale, who's with the Giants. And now it's the Giants and maybe the Patriots are the man coverage teams of football. And maybe throw the Saints in there too, teams like that. But so my point is they actually added a little bit more zone last year, and maybe that's why, maybe Peters is just straight up better in man. He is. So I do think more of a man coverage team. Again, the Falcons probably going to run more man they did last year. They could use another corner. The Lions ran a bit of man coverage last year. I could see cover 2, which usually the man corners could play cover 2 pretty well because you want to sell it like it's man coverage in cover 2. And then the Niners could use a guy, like we said. The Vikings they were all zone last year. They're going to be like all man this year, man in cover 3. And then the Raiders ran man last year. I'm starting to think, like we said on the last slide, that they could go more zone. I'm going to go Lions here. I think they could use another corner. There's some talk that they really like Devin Witherspoon at their early first-round pick. He was gone. They ended up trading back and taking Gibbs. So they could still use another corner. They could go out there with Sutton. Sutton will start. C.J. Gardner-Johnson will be the slot. And the other outside corner, maybe a little bit of a battle. Jerry Jacobs. They did sign Emmanuel Mosley. He's struggling to finish seasons. He hasn't finished the season yet, and it was a cheap deal. Will Harris kind of converted to more of a corner, but there's really nothing set. They lost a lot of snaps from corner, so I still think that. And look to add another one. I think Peters is a good guy, because the Lions are looking to do something this year, so a veteran with some experience and playmaking ability, the ability to run that two-man under that they're trying to run. I think it makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to go Lions. Really thought about the Vikings. I probably would have put Vikings in here, but they are very, very low on cap space. And, of course, anybody can clear cap space. It's not the greatest thing in the world when you have to do that, but anybody could do it. Really, mainly the Lions, Vikings, and Falcons, what I looked at here. I'm going to go with the Lions on this one. And, again, for all these guys, it could be somebody that I didn't even list. I didn't want to sit here and list like every team. But Dalton Risner, a guard that's available. Some of those other guards kind of came up in the free agency that he was kind of in the conversation with, came off the board pretty early, and then he kind of sat around. So odd man out there, I suppose. He's probably asking for too much. But Jags and Giants I start talking with here because I actually think they need a left guard like Dalton Risner, but I think they're going to rely on what they have. I'm a little afraid. The Jags are not the end of the world. I think the Giants can be starting Bredesen in there. I would like for them to get better. I almost predicted the Giants. I have a feeling they may kind of rely on what they have. The Cowboys need somebody. They were considering drafting somebody. There's a draft room video of them, and we kind of knew it. I thought maybe they would draft Steve Avila pre-draft, the TCU guard, but there's a draft room video of them like deciding between Mozzie Smith or the guard. They kept saying the guard. Before they took Mozzie Smith, they took Mozzie Smith. So they could still use a guard mainly because of injury concern. And if Tyrone Smith, who's the main injury concern, he's at left tackle. If he goes down, Tyler Smith plays at left tackle spot. And I think I like Tyler Smith better at tackle than guard on top of it. But then they need a guard in there. They need depth. It's very important over there, even though it's a good offensive line. So that would make some sense. Is it super appealing to Risner? Like, hey, am I going to start there? And how much are they going to pay me? But the Bengals in there there's another team that could rely on what they have. It's what they've been doing. That's my knock on the Bengals. They rely on development. They insist on who they've drafted, what they've had. Now they can't get over that hump that is so close. Now it's time just like, let's do it. Let's just go out there and do it. So, and Risner isn't the greatest guy in the world, but go get better, and the Cardinals definitely could use some help. Are they desperate to get better now? That was the question with the Cardinals. He could fit. I'm going to go Bengals. I feel like they need that left guard in there. Don't rely on the development of Volson. Please don't. He struggled a bit last year, and maybe it wasn't the plans weren't to go all out with him. But they have some other guys that obviously can play there as well. But just go get better. Go get better here. So, and I think the Bengals got striking out in the AFC Championship last year and the Super Bowl the year before. Now's the time. This is going to be the year. This has to be the year. So just go out and get, even if you don't have to start him week one. he might think he's going to start, so he'll sign, and then just get another good body in there. That's my thinking with the Bengals. I actually originally had the Giants here. And then Ezekiel Elliott, one of the top running backs available. Really came down to two options for me here, but we'll talk about that in a second. But the Chargers, and you can see one of them, but the Chargers with Kellen Moore there, and I thought they would draft a running back. They did not. They drafted a couple receivers. The Ravens, which, they value running back very much. And then the Buccaneers, have been linked to Zeke a couple months ago. The Bengals, same thing. They did draft Chase Brown. It sounds like they'll keep mixing around, so maybe a little less likely. The Chiefs a wild card, but it's a team I can just see doing it right before the season or something, just adding another back in there. Short yardage, but they do like Pacheco for that. I really like two teams for Zeke as my prediction. The Chargers, which I predicted, and the Ravens. The Ravens got good running backs, but they have durability concerns, obviously. And I think he would be a scheme fit and a good short yardage guys. The type of running backs they like, just get that extra yard. Just grind for that extra yard here. And Zeke could block as well, and that's pretty big for Lamar Jackson. So I really like the Ravens. There was some talk that they really, really like Bijan Robinson, but he just went too early. There was some talk about them even maybe trading up for them. That was like the pre-draft smoke, and the pre-draft info was actually ended up being very, very accurate. So I believe that for sure. Just if the right running back, they weren't going to force it. So obviously, so they ended up getting one. So Zeke they could really like, not to get the full load, but smart running back, good experience, could block and grind out the short yardage. Very reliable, very reliable. He's gonna be durable. He's gonna be in there helping you. So it made a lot of sense for the Ravens. It just makes too much sense for the Chargers because they still need a running back. And they need a running back even if Eckler's in there. And then you factor in that Eckler, there's a whole contract situation. He's demanding a trade. They're allowing him to seek a trade. I don't think he gets traded, but still with that situation, it's pretty tough. So they need a running back even more on top of that. They do have some other pieces in there. Josh Kelly, Isaiah Spiller. I don't know if you can rely on that. Kellen Moore's in there from the Cowboys to the Chargers. Offense coordinator likes to run the football. He knows Zeke. I think he's got to like Zeke. I mean, they were playing Zeke more than we thought they should at times because they had Pollard in there. So he's got to like him that much. Why not? It's a team that, their goal is to, first they got to win a playoff game, but their goal is, and it should be, win a Super Bowl. When you have a guy like Justin Herbert and the talent they got, for sure. So go get another guy in there. Go get a guy with experience. He's declined, but he's still a solid running back that can help you out. So Chargers make the most sense. The Ravens didn't. They do make a ton of sense though, for the reasons I explained. So interesting one to watch. Kind of one of maybe the biggest name there in Zeke. Let's talk about a quarterback here, Carson Wentz. Sitting around, he's got a lot of starting experience. Teams kind of just insisting on him, or like, hey, we'll give him a go as a starter. It hasn't really worked out. The talent's in there somewhere, but now's the time where it's like, all right, the talent's in there somewhere, but I don't think we're getting it out. But he's got experience. He still does have that big playability. He's got the bad playability too, but he's got the big playability. And then some teams that could definitely be looking for a backup. The Bengals actually need a backup pretty bad. I'd recommend more like a Teddy Bridgewater for their backup, perhaps. So, somebody a little safer. But they do need a backup, in my opinion, pretty damn bad. The Packers need somebody with experience because Jordan Love should be and will be the guy. But who's going to be the backup? Etling, I don't think so. Sean Clifford, they just drafted him in the 5th round, but I don't think he's ready for that. And they see upside with him, perhaps why they drafted him. Because it's definitely not based on how he was just playing. And the Buccaneers could use another body. I think they're more likely to go Baker and Trask though. The Cardinals could need somebody to start early on. Maybe they feel like they have that guy in there with Murray out. Maybe not. And the Chiefs a little bit of a wild card. I kind of can see. They need a backup. Obviously, they did get Gabbert not that long ago, but maybe they bring in some competition. Maybe they would like him as a back. I would love Matt Ryan for them if that's a possibility. Maybe less likely to happen now. I'm gonna go with the Packers though. They're really the only team that makes decent sense. I mean, I can make other teams like I kind of did make some sense, but again, like the Bengals, I think they really need a backup. But I think you're more likely to go the kind of the safer quarterback route, the game manager quarterback route, perhaps, rather than a guy that's going to turn the ball over. Maybe not. I mean, we've seen Burrow early last year, a little reckless with the ball. Maybe they just want the guy that it's okay if he does that if he can make big plays because they got big time receivers. Not that Burrow really is that guy, but maybe they see Wentz for a guy like that, as a backup. But I'm going to go Packers. I think it's going to be appealing to Wentz as well. I think he thinks that maybe he'll be able to get in there, and I think it's a big need for the Packers is somewhat of a legit, and I guess is Wentz legit anymore, but what's available, a legit backup quarterback here that might have to play, and I think he could be good in that LaFleur offense. I think they can make him better than what he was recently. So get him as the Jordan Love backup. That's the team that made the most sense. So. Another one I wanted to talk about him because another one of those bigger name guys, I suppose, even though everyone's definitely doubting him for a good reason, at this time. I remember the Colts got him. They were like, oh, he's going to be good again. He's going to be good, I promise. And then, no. And then he went to the Commanders like, okay, this time I mean it. No. So now he's just got to be a backup. But I do think if he has to play, I think LaFleur and co. can get something a little bit more out of him. Or less interceptions maybe. If he has to play. Obviously, that's not the hope there for the Green Bay Packers. So just some thoughts I had. Mainly just went through fit and need for these teams. There'll be some surprises here, obviously. And, I can't wait to see it. There should be the next couple weeks. There should be more and more signings. The next, day, every day they've been happening. But throughout the next few weeks, we should be hearing signings. So check out those recent draft videos. You won't be disappointed. Like, subscribe to notifications on while you're there on the channel. would be much appreciated. Follow us on Twitter. We're always talking about this news, free agency, more, just always interacting with you guys. Link pin in the comments for that. Anything else you're looking for. It's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.